Well, welcome to Exponential Next Future of Multiplication series. This is 7 conversations that we're having that we think are actually reshaping the church of tomorrow today. And my name is Bill Kokenar. I'm the Director of Deployment for Exponential. That means I get to provide operational oversight for the exponential learning communities and other R&D and expanding educational opportunities that we have. And I am pleased to be here with my co-host, Carrie Williams, the Executive Director of Exponential Next. Carrie, welcome, and I'll let you introduce our guests.
Thanks, Bill. It's so good to be with you guys today. I'm really excited about today's conversation. As Bill mentioned, I'm part of the Exponential team, and we just get the honor and the privilege of having conversations like this all the time. And so it's our heart to share this conversation with you so that it will benefit you. And trust me, it will. This conversation we are calling today Off the Beaten Path. And you'll discover the reasons why. It really is, what does multiplication look like off the beaten path, out of the normal places and spaces that we consider on a regular basis when we think about church planting, specifically in the United States. And so today we have some really great guests. I would call one of them certainly a friend, and one of them I'm getting to know as a friend as we are tackling some things together.
An inspiring friend.
Yeah, that's
inspiring.
Well said, Bill. So Troy Evans
And he'll be your friend soon.
Troy Evans and Ryan Hill are here with us today, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves. Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, kind of how you ended up where you're at. So Ryan, why don't you take it away?
Great. Yeah, Carrie and Bill, first of all, just thanks for having us on today. It's just a joy to be with you. We're grateful for the leadership that you both are giving in just expanding the work of church planting across this country. And so thanks for having us on. For me, as Carrie mentioned, my name is Ryan, and I'm the executive director for the SALT Network. For me, right out of college, I went to work as a CPA in the business world, and just enjoyed working in kind of nonprofit consulting, things like that. But about a decade ago, I transitioned into full-time ministry, had friends and elders and leaders in our church that kind of tapped me on the shoulder and said, I think maybe God has gifted you and is calling you to go into ministry. And so I had the opportunity to join one of our early church plants in our network as kind of an executive pastor type role to help build a team and to kind of help grow that church and that organization. And then now, almost 6 years ago, joined a team that went to Florida to kind of expand the reach of our network across kind of out of the Midwest and into another region. And then 2 years ago, moved back to the Midwest to join kind of our network central staff team, really to give leadership for the organization as we grew towards scale and growth and health in our church planting efforts. And so I've been here in Ames for the past couple of years on our network team.
Thanks, Ryan. And so sad that you left Florida.
Me too. And my wife.
Bill and I are both in Florida. And so we call
Right.
Florida home, even though I'm on the East Coast and Bill is on the West Coast of Florida. But, it's still home. So
We are partial to Florida. Yes.
a little bit, just a little bit. All right, Troy, tell us a little bit about yourself, friend.
Hey, yeah, thank y'all, man. It's a big old hug. Y'all family,
Yeah.
and, wish I was in Florida with y'all. Oh man. I'm from Michigan, after running the streets for a minute, surrendered my life to Jesus, and I committed to doing what I did on the block to do for him. And then later I found out I was actually making disciples, but with just a little bit of different theology, right? And so that's what I committed to doing that for the rest of my life. And then by God's grace alone, I was able to become an IT engineer and move into the tech, own a tech company or two, and did that. And then the Lord just grabbed me by the throat and told me to go and do a little bit more. And so I broke it down in 5 different things. Like, in my 20s, I planted in my first church in a homeless shelter. In my 30s, planted a church in Grand Rapids, kind of more sort of normal in the hood though. And then in my late 30s, planted a hip hop church in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And then in my 40s, I started to work with the Wesleyan Church, responsible for urban church planting for North America. And then in my 50s, I run a urban church planting network called Nitrogen Urban Urban Church Planting Network. So yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. I love it. So both of you guys are focused on, church planting in spaces that I think kind of the average leader is not necessarily has at the top of their mind, right? And so the idea behind this conversation is to help everybody listening in to expand your imagination, to lean in to this conversation and what the Holy Spirit might be saying in regards to where the Lord's moving in spaces and places that are outside of kind of the normal, rural street that folks would travel. And so why don't both of you, I just want you to share what you're doing, who you're doing it with, where you're doing it, and a little bit about why you're doing it. Why these groups, why kind of this target, what led you to that space, and what are you seeing God do as you do that? So I know that was a lot in one big, kind of breath. It's just permission given to share whatever you'd like about what you're doing, basically. So, Troy, why don't you kick us off?
So the why is, the truth of it is that my nephew was murdered. And other than my church, I couldn't find anywhere for him to go. I couldn't think of, this was post after he died. I really couldn't think of like, yo, where could he go? Where they gonna lock him on their deacon board? Where is he gonna go where he can go? Super intelligent, young 17-year-old. Where would he go? Right. And not be expected to change everything that he knew that he was. And so from that, I set on the journey to figure out what that looks like, and stole a couple of things from Ephraim and Phil Jackson, and then later Tommy Irvin D, and threw them all in one bundle. And then that's where the mission of the Edge Church, which I had opportunity to pastor for 15 years, where that mission started, which was to relevantly reach the hip hop cultures for Christ.
Yeah.
And, without any apologies, right? And to go after it. And so from that, I guess that's the form is a good Wesleyan, because that would form my theological quadrilateral, right? My worldview, my perspective, and the journey that I've been on. And what we did is, after we planted, I retired about a year and a half ago. And there was an organization in which I work with very closely, Nitrogen, which was the church planting entity for the Wesleyan denomination for about 7 years. And so while we were doing our work there, we decided that we were pretty good at planting suburban and rural churches, but we sucked at planting urban churches. And I'm a business guy that just so happened to be a pastor. To me, it's just a basic SWOT analysis. And if we suck at it, if it's one of our core objectives, strategic objectives, then we need to put some people, money, and the strategy if we're going to be serious about it. And so that was a plan. And so we thought, and we started going on a journey, and we just thought it would be best so that we can really go after the journey with no apologies and take it back to the local church. So churches can plant churches, not denominations. And so that's what we did. So we took Nitrogen and placed it at the Edge, where I was pastoring. And from there, we started to do some weird stuff. So we planted a urban church planting network in England. I didn't know there were many Black people in England. That was a thing. They asked me to go. I'm like, for what? No. But yeah, so we spent 2.5 years there building an urban church planting network, and I think that was the birth of me doing an assessment to find out what are our core competencies. What I found out is that we're not good at planting seeds. We're good at planting trees, meaning we can plant networks, urban networks, and that's what we've done. And we'll let the networks plant churches, and so that's where we moved our start switching. So now, currently, I still work with the Wesleyan denomination, serving in a similar capacity through Nitrogen. So I'm still responsible for urban church planting for North America, for the Wesleyan denomination. But the Nitrogen is a non-denominational network, and the work that we've done up until we've really focused on Michigan and Atlanta, and recently we've added North Carolina, and very simply we just take the existing church there and we're fortifying the existing church to say, you need to be a mama. You know, you need to be about making disciples, and that's what we've been concentrating on. So here in Michigan, is celebrating 32 churches that we've in the last 2 years that we've gone through to help those churches become stronger and making disciples and considering planting churches.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what's great about what I've seen in the Wesleyan Church. There is a very kingdom mindset.
Mhm.
And so, you know, I know a number of places where the Wesleyan Church is helping church planting and doing some things that won't necessarily carry their name. You know, a lot of them will, but not necessarily. And yeah, it's great to see.
Only 2 of those churches are Wesleyan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. I love it. Love
Yeah.
what you're doing. Ryan, why don't you share a little bit about what you're doing? Or a lot?
Yeah, kind of I think how we made it onto this conversation was, our kind of off the beaten path is a real intentional focus on reaching college students. And so for us, the first church in our network was planted 30 years ago here in Ames. And really, it was a biblical conviction that college students should be discipled in the context of the local church. And, for many, many decades, the church had kind of just left the college campus to the kind of non-church, parachurch entities who I'm so grateful for, has done an incredible job reaching and discipling college students. But the church here was founded with a desire to see those college students discipled with young, middle, and old all around them to help them see what it looks like to live in the broader body of the church. And so it wasn't until 2010 that the next church in our network was planted. In all reality, our founder of Cornerstone thought, man, North America's got plenty of churches. We'll do a lot of global work and we'll do a lot of local work, but there's a lot of great churches in the United States. And as his daughter went off to college and he tried to help her find a church that loved college students the way Cornerstone did, he was pretty heartbroken to find it actually wasn't as common as he thought it might be. And so another church was born in 2010 and then a couple more in 2013. And all of a sudden we started to realize there's need and there's opportunity for this to expand. And so now there's 30 churches in our network and 12 or 13 more that are in the pipeline to be planted in the next few years. We're working specifically to start multi-generational churches near college campuses, but with an intentional focus on reaching college students. Most campuses that we get to, we don't find more than 5% of students that are actually engaged in Christian ministries, whether that's churches, parachurch ministries, whatever it might be. We consider it a pretty reached campus if we can find 5%, 6%. And for us, it's left us in a place where we are desperate to see that statistic change. In the last couple of years, I would say we feel like we've stumbled into a bit of strategic vision that wasn't our intention. Because again, we originally just wanted to see college students reached because most churches just don't try to. What we've discovered in the last handful of years is that college students are actually like the best fuel for church planting. We'll say a lot that we believe college students are the most reachable, trainable, and sendable demographic that exists, right? They move to our campus, move to our city, not to stay, but to get a degree and then go somewhere else and find a great job. And so we're saying rather than being frustrated with that reality, we're going to actually try to leverage that reality to give them a big vision and to give them leaders who are equipped and empowered to go lead. And then say to all those recent college graduates, hey, take your degree and go to that next city and that next campus and help us plant new work and to see more students, more non-students reached with the gospel. And so by God's grace, we're seeing now hundreds of students every year raise their hand as goers, and they're helping us to pretty rapidly plant more churches. And so our network team, we're believers that it's not our network team that does the primary work. We really want to empower churches to do that work. And so we're trying to just make sure they have all the resources they need to raise up planters, to send out leaders and teams, and to see more churches go to that next campus in that next city.
Yeah. And maybe if you could talk a little bit more about that. And I think those of you that are listening in, you can see why we wanted to kind of press into these two areas, because when someone signs up to plant a church, it's more often than not a suburban area. It's rarely Urban Core, it's rarely College Campus. And both these guys, their organizations are doing amazing things. In fact, we'll put their contact information in this, make it available to you as well. So if you want to reach out to them directly, you can do that. But Ryan, if you talk about how you partner, because you partner with different churches too. You're not just trying to come in and say, we've got the plan, we'll do it. Tell us how that works.
Yeah, we have a significant commitment to college ministry. And so we put a lot of time, energy, and resources into reaching college students. What we'll do though is if we go to a new city or new campus and we find a church that's already there that is really doing the kind of ministry we would want to do in that city, we're going to at least have a conversation with that church to see, does it make more sense for us to just partner and work together instead of us, planting something from scratch. It takes a tremendous amount of resource, a tremendous amount of time and energy and sacrifice to go start something from scratch. And so we're eager to, have a conversation with an existing church that if we can help them and if they can help us all do this common mission we have of reaching those students and planting more churches, then let's have that conversation and work through that process for sure. So I think of our 30, about 5 or 6 of them have been kind of those existing churches that we've pulled in. Yeah.
And you got 12, you say, in the pipeline?
Yep. We've got 2 that are about to launch in the next month. We should have 7 that'll launch next fall, and then 3 or 4 for sure right now in 2026. Hopefully we'll be able to add a couple more to that pretty soon.
That's excellent. That's excellent. And Troy, you and I have had a chance to journey a little bit together, and I've seen you, literally seen you as a hero maker, meeting the guy that you handed off Edge to. But talk up a little bit about how you're working with churches, how you're helping them work together about multiplication, because Exponential is all about multiplication. Like we're certainly want to see churches grow, but we don't want to see, we're not big fans of necessarily of transfer growth. We want to see disciple making based multiplication, which, Ryan, that's what I love about, you reaching those college campuses. You play that trajectory out with those kids coming out of colleges and universities, living on mission is great. And Troy, you talk a little bit about the multiplication piece of what you're doing.
Yeah. So our deal is we all heard the statement that you can plant a lot of churches, but you won't necessarily get disciples. But if you make disciples, churches will emerge, right? And so I'm basically like, yo, let's put it to test. I've worked with a lot of young, my whole ministry has been youth and young adults. We're playing with a bunch of 16, 18-year-olds. They were, the old people in the church were 35, except me, and
I'm not sure what that makes me, but go ahead.
And so this new wave over the last year is a different way for me, because pastors, I'm the younger person in the room. It's a total flip. And to work with the existing church, to talk about a very simple principle of discipleship, is that if we make disciples and not focus on getting the big numbers and reaching, the critical mass and all this stuff, but really worry about making disciples. And I'm just happy to say that we have implemented Hero Makers in it, because what I needed to find out was, well, what does this translate in the hood? You know what I'm saying? To be clear, when I'm talking about urban, you said it earlier, is that we need to reach everywhere. However, we need to have a very specific focus on the hood, urban core, starting right there. And so for me, I need to see, like, does it translate? And it does, and that's what we're doing. So one of the things that we're doing is we're using Hero Makers very simply, and then we're using Navigators. And what we're taking is a monthly network huddle, a weekly touch point, and we're taking them through it to talk about making disciples and multiplying. And then we are at a place. This is our third cohort, and they're at a place now that we're introducing. Hey, do you know what we are? We're a network. We're doing the things that networks do. Now we're going to start building in the systems of recruiting, assessing, coaching, training, networking, and resourcing. And so in terms of this particular group, we're early on in the idea of casting compelling vision, bring them along, and them being Talmudim themselves, being disciples themselves, and then now making disciples to say, oh, let's send them out. And that's where we are. So yeah, it's been an amazing journey.
Yeah.
So cool. So I just am reflecting on even my own personal life as I'm listening to both of you, and realizing why probably we chose you to, aside from just our relationship and the work that you're doing that we respect and value significantly. My own life is impacted by the work that you guys have your hands in. And so when I was young, I grew up in the hood, and we had a church who would come into our apartment complex and do like a lunch a week where they would share the gospel. And I vaguely can remember getting on a bus to go to some kind of youth event, and I was very young, to go and hear the gospel at this event. And that's kind of where my discipleship journey started. My parents didn't know the Lord. No one I knew the Lord. I mean, we were in the middle and, in the hood, no relationship with the church at all, other than people making the decision to intentionally come to me and share the gospel with me and disciple me. And so, I am the fruit of those kinds of efforts. And so, and then Ryan, on the flip side, I've got my daughter who is in college and another one who is a senior in high school right now. And of course, the first thing that she starts looking for is where can I meet with other people who are like me, who love Jesus? And so I value significantly the work that you're doing because it's spilling over into my own family's life. And so Ryan, talk to us for a minute about how you guys are making disciples through planting in those college spaces.
Yeah, and every church has got kind of discipleship pathways and systems on the community side. And so I may just share a little bit of what our approach is on the college side. And again, our churches are typically 60 to 70% community people and 30 or 40% college. And so we're not only reaching college students, but obviously reaching a pretty significant number. For us, like our big focus is on developing leaders of the students themselves. We just unashamedly believe the best person to reach a student is another student. And so no matter how relevant that 25-year-old is, they're not going to class every day. They're not living in the dorms or the apartments. So they're just not as relatable. And so we put just tons of staff and volunteer time, energy, investment into discipling student leaders in small group environments. And they are intense and intentional and authentic, and a lot of sin confessed, a lot of really real conversations. And then we really just call on them to get back to their campus, back to their apartments and dorms, and really reach their peers with the gospel. And so we have weekly large group gatherings that are highly evangelistic, but really the power is sending those students back to that campus, knowing how to share the gospel, knowing how to live it out authentically. We're going to give them a lot of support, a lot of accountability in how they do it. But we just really want to train them to reach their friends, not just always feel like, church is where you invite your lost friends so the professional can tell them what's true. Yeah. It's to live out the gospel on a daily basis and be willing to share it and speak about it with your friends. And so for us, we put a huge focus on student leadership, and we've seen God bring just a tremendous amount of fruit through that effort. And so we're going to keep doing it over and over again at each one of these campuses.
Could I pick up on that? So I work a lot with denominational network leaders. I was at a gathering recently of leaders of denominations and networks that accounted for about 75% of the church planting that's taking place in the U.S. And one of the key topics, if not the most important topic, or certainly one that's on a lot of people's minds, is this idea of leadership pipeline. I think from a church planting standpoint,
yes, sir.
Kind of in baseball terms, we relied on free agency, for a long time, and no one ever developed their own farm system. So I'd love to hear you guys specifically as it relates to church planters. Like, what does your leadership pipeline look like, or that strategy for developing and recruiting church planters?
Jeez. That right there is the thing. So I did a little bit of research. It was 12 superintendents. 10 of them are Wesleyan, and 2 were non-Wesleyan. But and I wanted to find out before we jump into doing things, to say, So what is the state of the site of multiplication in the area in the hood? And so I asked about 14 questions. I only want to talk about 2 or 3, but we have to do the other stuff. And so when we got down to it, let me see. So it was 7 out of them said that they are that their biggest concern, because I asked them what were some of the barriers. They all agreed that, yo, I want to do this. We have money, we have these things. One of them, 7 of them said that we don't know how. Now they represent about 1,100 churches that they had the opportunity to lead, and they said we don't know how. We don't know the first step to take, so we do nothing. Right, and so we just if someone comes to us and say, hey, we want to plant an urban church, then we do it. But there's no strategic effort because we don't know what to do. But here's a more to your point, Bill, is that every one of them said we don't have leaders. And so for us, we decided, so with those 2 things, we rolled out a couple of things, and we launched them at Exponential this year, and really softly, but we launched them. One was to answer the question of, so we don't know how. If you can go through seminary and get a degree, do your thing, and never have to hear from one Black theologian, never have to read one Black theologian, never. So imagine that on the flip, that you never ever see anyone that look like you'll hear from you like that. So where does that exist? Then you hear people like me that fell 7th grade 3 times, that learn to read when you're in 20s. So even if you do have the information, it is so lofty that you can actually never get it done and do it, right? So where is it practical? So what we decided to say, okay, well, we're going to make sure that we know how. So we launched a platform for that, and our slogan is, hood people got something to say too, right? And so it is urban leaders speaking to all people about practical things. So that was to say, well, let's learn how to do it. And then for people, and the people side of it is saying, well, we don't have a pool. Where do you go fishing to get urban leaders? It's awesome that suburbanites come to the hood, but man, we need to go get urbanites and where do they dwell? So we created a platform where it's basically where urban leaders can go and submit their resumes, and then for free, urban people that are looking for urban leaders can go and get and start to build into that. Along with the training things that we do. But those are two pieces that we've implemented over the last since Exponential.
Yeah, it's excellent. Yeah, Ryan, what's playing look like in your context?
Yeah, we've got a couple pipelines that we talk about. One of them being we've got a pipeline for when a freshman shows up to campus to when they graduate. How do we help them go from disconnected and lost, not connected to believers and don't know Jesus, to understanding the gospel, getting involved in community, becoming a leader, and then kind of exiting that pipeline thinking, how do I go to the rest of my life and live it on mission for the kingdom? And some of those end up in vocational ministry, but the vast majority end up as what we pray is just incredible church members and leaders and volunteers and teachers and all kinds of things like that. And so some of those do end up going into vocational ministry. And so we'll pull them into our college ministry staff system. We typically don't send out church planters who are younger than 30. And so, there's no way to get from 22 to 30 without 8 years. It's just, it's math. You can't get past it. And so we've got some staff positions that we'll put those residency positions and then staff positions. Then eventually we would end up with people who are directing our college ministries. And for us, that is the best pipeline for developing a church planter in our system, because that college director's preaching a lot. They're managing a staff team and managing a budget. They're casting vision and rallying people towards something. Like, they're doing a lot of the work of church planting just in a safe environment under the covering of elders and lead pastors and inside of a college ministry. And so we feel that by the time somebody's directed our college ministries for 3, 4, 5 years, they've got a lot of the tools and skills ready to go plant a church. And so then we'll send them as church planters. So we're recruiting from the outside for sure. But as you mentioned, Bill, there's a lot of people fishing from not very large ponds for church planters. And so we recognize we've really got to do the hard pipeline work of developing from within. And we're working hard to do that, to be, if we're going to sustain and really do church planting well and at scale, we got to develop from inside. And so we're working hard to do that.
Yeah. Excellent. Carrie?
Hard
Yep.
work. That's hard work from the inside.
It is.
Okay, so I want to know if you guys have anything else that you want to share regarding why the people listening in should consider church planting off the beaten path in regards to multiplication. Like, why is it important to the multiplication conversation? Troy, you want to go first?
Yeah, I do. I feel like I went off the beaten path on my answer. So I do. I want to answer that. But so our strategy is clear. It's like we call it: bring them in, sit them down, raise them up, send them out. It really we compel leaders, and we convince them that they need to be disciples themselves. Then we equip them to make disciples. And then we literally commission them to go out and make disciples in that context and multiply. So that's how we do, that's how we raise them up. So, man, I would say that it's the greatest opportunity I believe that we have for multi-ethnic ministry is going to happen in the cities. And I want us to give ourselves a little bit of a break. Don't press ourselves too hard, because I always remind the young bucks, especially, that Dr. King was brutally murdered to fight for what many of us are fighting for just 4 years before I was born. We're still in beta.
Yeah.
And with us all coming together and singing Kumbaya and rocking side by side, and even in the context of church. So I would say give ourselves a little bit of a break, and know that we're still in beta, but then also know that it's going to take time. If you're going to do urban, I'll say don't do urban ministry or college ministry for that matter. I speak for you, like, unless you're willing to be in it for long. Those 8 years, you can't rush them. So just be willing to commit to the long haul. Just don't do it.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, that's a great word. We're often telling planters, like, even the president of our network, his new idea is he wants to get every new church planter a seedling of an oak tree and say, hey, when you get to town, plant that. And, year 1, year 2, year 3, there's not going to be much to speak of. You might be discouraged, but come back, stay there faithfully for 30 years and it'll be something pretty significant. So much in our church planting world, everybody wants the quick result and the big highlightable story. And the real ministry is long-term, being in a place for a long time. That's really great. I think, the thing I would say is we really believe the future of church multiplication is in our ability to find the goers, those that will take the risk, those that will step up to the call, they'll respond to lostness and say, man, my own personal comfort and safety and what I like in my neighborhood and my city, I'm willing to sacrifice that and leave that for the sake of going. And so for us, we really believe that recent college graduates are the best goers out there. And so I tell planters all the time, if you can convince 40-year-olds with great jobs and a big, nice house and kids in every sport and activity that are possible, if you can convince them to go on your church plant, they'll be incredible leaders. They'll give a lot. They'll be fantastic if you can convince them to go. But that's a lot harder to do than go to that college student. That college student's lease is going to end in May anyway, and they already want to leave your city. And so you can go to that college student and give them a vision that they'll believe in and that they'll give their life for. And so find the goers. my advice to those that are trying to do church planting, especially off the beaten path, find the goers and then give them a vision. And that's a pretty powerful recipe for God to do something pretty incredible. And if you can do that, I think we can see something pretty significant happen.
Yeah, people in their early 20s really believe God can do what he says he can do.
Yeah.
Like there's this just genuine, it's genuine, like he said he could do that. I believe that. And beautiful. And now we just so appreciate you guys, because I really do think in terms of if we're going to see a move of God, it's going to be in the generation that's coming up, and it's going to be from the edges. And I think as people come to faith, I wonder, even in immigrant communities, we're actually seeing some amazing multiplication. And so we just, man, it's an honor to have you guys here, and really appreciate your time today. Appreciate what you're doing for the kingdom, and that you're in it for the long haul. and we're grateful for that. Thank you for those of you that are listening. We chose these two guys specifically for what they're doing, and certainly if you're interested, we encourage you to reach out to them. But thank you for being a part of this episode of a 7-part series that where we're taking a deeper look at the nature of multiplication for the future. And we invite you to join us for the next episode of the future of multiplication as we explore potential opportunities for the future of the church. But Carrie, good to be with you as well. Thank you.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, guys, for joining us. And as Bill mentioned, in the description of today's show, today's episode, you're going to find the links that these guys mentioned as far as the work that they referenced. And so just to make it easy for you to find. Thanks again, Ryan. Thanks again, Troy. Appreciate you guys
Thanks, Carrie. Thanks, Bill.
listening in.
Thanks.